It's Wednesday, September 24th, everyone. Hi. Gosh, I'm doing these weekly shows, Ben, and trying to talk to interesting people who are very plugged in so we can kind of process honestly and attempt to understand what the hell is going on in our country and really around the world. But we're going to focus on domestic stuff together today. Everyone, this has been Mycellus.
Damn,
Mycellus.
Mycellus.
Mycellus. I practiced
Mycellus.
that and then I effed it
That's all
up.
right.
Mycellus, who is the co founder of the MeidasTouch Network and host of the MeidasTouch podcast. I don't know how you do everything you do because you also lecture at the University of Southern California about law. You're a civil rights attorney. You were the lead attorney for Colin Kaepernick in his lawsuit against the NFL. And you created the MeidasTouch Network along with your cute brothers, Brett and Jordy, who I really enjoyed interviewing on my podcast back in May. And it is the fastest growing independent news network in the world, covering breaking news, politics, law, and so much more. And this is going to be a fun conversation, Ben. The last time, as I mentioned, we talked. I think it was an exclusive. The first time I had all the brothers with me. That's right, not all of them, because there's one other brother.
No, you had all the brothers. We have a younger sister also, but you had all the
Oh,
brothers.
younger sister, sorry. So I had the three uh Mycellus boys. And it was something you guys had never done an interview together, the three of you. Did you have fun doing that?
We had a lot of fun. People don't know this about me, but I don't really love leaving my house, and so I very, I have my little life here where I go and walk down the block and get my Panera and come back and hang out with my baby girl who just turned 1 years old, and we're
Aw.
actually building her a little car right now in the background that I could see being built. But yeah, we took that trip to New York. We were there also for the Webby Awards. Which was an incredible honor. They gave us their podcast of the year, which again, from someone 5 years ago who didn't even think about podcasting or starting a media network and then getting that. It was a great experience. But the highlight of the trip, Katie, was I truthfully mean this was when we got to meet you. I grew up watching you on, on TV, and it was great to see you in person. And you broached a lot of topics and areas that I think a lot of people didn't know our backstory and just the dynamic that exists with the brothers. So for us all to be there in the same room, we wouldn't have thought of anyone else other to give that exclusive to than Katie Couric.
Ah, well, thank you so much. I really had fun talking to you and getting to know you all a little bit. I want to have a longer off the record, off camera conversation with you about your business sometimes, at some point, Ben. So maybe when I'm out in Los Angeles, I can do that.
Be great.
Uh, but I would really enjoy that. But um, you know, good Lord, Ben. I start every interview these days with what the F is going on, but I do want to ask you how you're able to cover this administration. The expression drinking out of a fire hose has been used time and time again, but honestly, it really does feel like that. And how are you able, at not only yourself but with everybody in your network, able to keep up with this incredibly busy and insane news cycle?
The phrase I keep on using over and over again, especially this week, is moral clarity. And I think if you're starting a media network in this day and age, and or before, you have to exist with moral clarity and really understand, like, why are we doing this and why am I not out there doing other things, right? There's a lot of ways if you wanted to make money, what someone could be doing. Could be working on Wall Street. I was a litigator handling cases across the country as a partner of a law firm, but the why informs the how, and the why is because I feel that there's truthfully an authoritarian regime that exists right now. I think that we're not in a constitutional crisis. The crisis has happened. We're post-constitutional crisis, living in a dictatorship right now as we speak. These years will be remembered as a dictatorship. The question is, do we get out of the dictatorship or do we remain in the dictatorship like we've seen decades and decades in other dictatorships? And I think when we act with the moral clarity to call these things out, and we understand foundationally we built this network on a set of morals and principles and values that lead the way, then that informs all of the coverage that we do. I can watch Donald Trump speaking in front of the United Nations and saying certain things, speaking at the Oval Office and saying horrible things about pregnant women not taking Tylenol and hepatitis B and all of these things. I can watch Donald Trump speak at the Charlie Kirk Memorial, but turn it into a hate rally. And I call it a hate rally because Trump turned it into one by saying, I hate you. I hate you. I hate this. He uses the word hate. So it's a hate rally. I can see Donald Trump speaking in Mount Vernon before then. And when you have the, I think, strong foundational lens of the why and the reason that we're doing this, it and I understand, and I think the audience intuitively understands why we're doing this. It actually makes the reporting and coverage easy
Hmm.
because I'm not going to both sides an issue when it doesn't need a both sides issue. And so I think it's very easy for me to respond to a news story and express my view right away. I'm not waiting to see what is this network saying or what's that network. We're leading it with our own voice, moral clarity.
Yeah. And gosh, there's so much to talk about. I mean, and so much has happened just in the last couple of weeks. And I guess one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is what are you talking about? I'm not gonna. You want me to plug that? One of the things we've been talking about, obviously, is the aftermath, the Charlie Kirk assassination, and the aftermath, and the whole Jimmy Kimmel stuff, and um, and you're right, the memorial service that really did turn into a political rally full of hate and venom. I watched Stephen Miller's speech and it was really scary. And I saw an interesting piece about how it was very much modeled over from a Goebbels speech from pre-Nazi Germany. And when you think about sort of what is happening and the kind of rallies they're having, I'm curious, just watching that, did it reinforce the feeling that we're living in a dictatorship, and sort of what emotional response did you have to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it reinforced the times that we're in right now. I think, though, a sign of hope is that I don't think the American people like what Donald Trump is selling. I unfortunately think that there are tens of millions of people who do really like it. He filled the stadium. We have to acknowledge. I mean, they filled the stadium there. Although I think the stadium was filled with people at first who thought they were going to a memorial, and it turned into something else. But there are tens of millions of people who really like the hate and they want more of it. They see masked ICE agents, and that brings them joy seeing people get injured and hurt. And when Donald Trump's out there covering up the Epstein files or building UFC arenas in front of the White House, which is one of the new things he's talking about, or turning the Rose Garden into Club Rose Garden, a cabal for rich people in Washington, D.C. to hold parties on the taxpayer dime. For whatever reason, the cult, I don't know, there are millions of people who love it. But there are way more people who don't love it. And there are a lot of people who hadn't been following what's been happening. I mean, Donald Trump did not win a majority of votes in the election. There was a plurality, unfortunately, and there was tens of millions of people who decided, you know what, I'm not going to vote. And a lot of people who thought that all of a sudden there was going to be affordable prices and no wars in the rest of the world and everything was going to be great. And they're seeing their life worse off. So as I watched that event, it does kind of it makes me very uneasy. But the hope that I do have is I don't think if you give parallels to other authoritarian regimes where they've secured the overall power and consolidated it in the first 55 days or 60 days or whatever, Trump's brand of authoritarianism is not is by 60+% of the population don't like this and really don't like it. And I think he gets less popular by the day. And I think it's, again, important for us to report on these things from a values-based approach versus a political lens. I pull back on my politics and pull forward or push forward on the values. And I tell people, because it's true, although some people are like, you do a political media network, how do you not like politics? I go, politics distorts, but the values and principles remain. What intrigued me is the human condition, and I'm interested in trying to help the human condition and to improve it and bring clarity. And based on my experience as a lawyer, bring receipts and an evidence-based approach to my report. Here's what he said. Here's what the document says. Do you believe this is true? That's more interesting to me than when I get a question. Who do you like is going to win who you rooting for in the Democratic election? Like which Democrat? I go, I'm not saying this in a way to sound, whatever. I don't care. Like, I mean, I want the person who represents the values and principles to rise to the top. And that's who I'm going to support, who's actually a real fighter, not because I think someone looks a certain way or promises things. I want to know who the fighters are.
What did you think of Jimmy Kimmel, his monologue? And well, before we talk about the monologue, because I thought it was really a master class in threading a lot of needles. Although, there were some parts where I thought were interesting choices. But what did you think of ABC? And I don't know if you probably don't, I don't know, maybe you do have some insider info, but the whole temporary suspension or indefinite suspension and then the decision to bring him back. And, what did that tell you about corporate America and about freedom of speech and about sort of the levels that these corporations will go to protect their own pocketbooks and in the name of sort of corporate greed?
I'm actually closer to the situation than many people know, because in my past world as a lawyer, I represented Colin Kaepernick,
Right,
and we did our big documentary deal right in 2020 post George Floyd with ABC Disney. And we did, a documentary on Hulu called Killing County, which was based on the cases that I litigated in Bakersfield and Kern County, which had the highest police shooting deaths per capita in the nation. And I remember being in meetings with leadership at Disney and ABC during those periods of times after George Floyd was killed.
right,
And the leadership was all about civil rights. And the pitch that we could have went to a lot of other networks and other streamers that wanted us. And they looked me in the eye, all of the leaderships, everyone knows who they are, the top people. And they looked at Colin in the eye and they said, we're with you. We support you. We're here for civil rights. We're here for your struggle. And this is what this company stands behind. And then I went with them. I told Colin, you know what? That was the pitch. That was better than any pitch. And it was coming from the highest levels. So, no, with that as my background and actually having personally done a civil rights related documentary on Hulu, it has been a completely bizarro upside down world to see those exact same people who I viewed as good empathetic people do this and capitulate and roll over the way it did, because I viewed them always as really kind of good people. And it has this personal aspect to me. Wow, if they got them, then who else are they able to get like that? But for me, going back to moral clarity, when I saw what Jimmy Kimmel said, I viewed it as nothing. I go, what am I missing here? Just about his initial line. I go, what am I missing here? He didn't say anything wrong. I don't even understand the argument. And then people's misinterpretations of what he was saying then became the story. What he actually said didn't matter at all. And then it got trapped through, again, a political prism of you need to apologize and you need to donate money to Charlie Kirk's family. I'm like, why? Why does he do? What is he apologizing for? What is he doing? And then you had Sinclair and Nexstar still to this day saying, unless he does X, Y, and Z, we're unless he apologizes and donates. And he didn't apologize sufficiently last night. I mean, look, when I watched his monologue last night, it was funny, it was heartfelt. He did not he was circumspect. I thought he was careful in areas where perhaps he didn't even need to be, as careful. And he was genuine from the heart and said, I never wanted and never intended at all to demean the death of a young man. I want to be very clear about that. He
Well,
said
he
that.
didn't, when he posted on X right after the assassination, it was a very compassionate, caring post. I don't know whether I don't think he mentioned it during his monologue. He didn't say what he said, but it was an extremely compassionate, caring post. He said, instead of the angry finger pointing, can we just for one day agree that it is horrible and monstrous to shoot another human? On behalf of my family, we send love to the Kirks and to all the children, parents, and innocents who fall victim to senseless gun violence. So, I mean, right away, he posted that. And I agree with you. His comment on the show was basically about people exploiting Charlie Kirk's death and using it to score political points. I think he used those exact words, which was true, undeniably true. And I think someone in the comments said people kind of interpret things or distort them to match their own political agendas. And I think that people just took the ball, ran with it, and this Brendan Carr guy who, ironically, I don't know if you saw, well, I think Jimmy used it in his monologue when he was tweeting about how dangerous it is to suppress free speech and how important comedians were. I don't know if we can find that, but it was honestly stunning that in 2022, I believe, Brendan Carr had posted that. So you're right. It's like this upside down world. And do you think, I mean, I like Bob Iger. Was he one of the people in the meeting with you?
They all were. Yeah, it was Bob. It was the president of ABC, Disney right now. It was the whole head of the leadership team, all the heads of ESPN. Everybody who was, and I viewed them perhaps naively as friends. I viewed them as good people. I viewed them as at a personal level, even right now, as I see it, like at a personal level. I haven't spoken to them in many years because I did that deal in 2020, and intermittently we would speak throughout the process as we brought more projects to them and things like that. But really, since 2024, I haven't really had much kind of contact and conversation with the upper echelon. But I like them. Like, these are people who I thought were good people who cared. And the reality is the pressure that's being exerted right now on all these executives and all of these people, it will undoubtedly, we all know it would likely hurt the bottom line of Disney, ABC, or whatever these networks are if they fought back. Like, their stock prices will take a hit. We know that will, right? Like, there will be shareholder issues for sure right away in the short term. But the problem is that if everybody's capitulating at the high level, they're all part of this ship that's going to sink eventually as they erode the safeguards around them. And I think so much in this Trump world, these executives and oligarchs and all of these rich people, they are searching for and this is very Trumpy, the short-term transactional resolution
Right.
versus understanding the broader dynamics here at play that are going to harm them in the long run anyway. The story of where, someone from the mafia comes into the store and you pay him the first time. Do they come back? Of course they do. They're going to come back every single time knowing that you pay. So You either got to stand up or close shop, run away, or do something, because the moment they get a taste that you're going to do something, they're going to come back more and more and more. And we just saw what Donald Trump said, right? He posted yesterday, I'm going to test out my new legal theory and I'm going to sue ABC Disney because they're now an arm of the DNC.
And I was reading an article in the Times about Larry Ellison, who, he and his son David are two of Donald Trump's favorites, and the family could soon control an empire that includes CBS, Paramount, Warner, CNN, and a piece of TikTok.
Look at Saudi Arabia, MBS. What did he do with the richest oligarchs and his own family and his royal family? What was the outcome there? He brought him into the Ritz-Carlton and said, transfer the money into my bank account right now and get the hell out of here. What happens in Putin's Russia? Who are the first people that often go? It's often the oligarchs who are closest to him who just wouldn't keep on going, and then he extracts from them. And so just even in their self-interest, you have to be a student of history to see where this is going. And so even the examples you give there, or whoever it is, they show up, Tim Cook with the gold bars, in the Oval Office, and get maybe a temporary tariff reduction or exemption for Apple. Well, that's great. You secured that for Apple, but small businesses and medium-sized businesses are suffering. And when we see these recession indicators all happening, it's not like Apple's going to be immune to a wave of economic turmoil that can unfold as our deficit is skyrocketing. The debt is accumulating at a faster pace by far now than under Biden. And that's going to hurt America. And that's what we need to get back to, Katie, which is America. Not this. We have to get back to what is America? A melting pot, a nation of immigrants, a place of love and empathy that has issues and serious problems in the past. How do we restore America and say, you know what? That's not America. No, I'm not doing that. No. I see my daughter's riding a new bicycle that we built her, but we taught her,
Wait,
we're reading
she just won. She's
she
riding
just
a
turned
bike.
one.
She's
She
riding
just
a
turned one.
bike.
My wife has the handle bar and is pushing her. Um, but we have a book that we read her. No, and the power. It's a magical power to tell people no and create boundaries. You just got to no. No, I'm not doing that, Donald. No, no, and we need leaders to say no. Have integrity.
Isn't the part of the problem though, Ben, is that there really isn't an alternative narrative that's happening in this country. It's a lot of disgust and anger and rage and confusion over what the Trump administration is doing. But are we hearing strong enough voices, positive voices on building the kind of America you describe and that most of us really do want to live in? Well, not all of us, but many of us. And I keep wondering, where are the leaders? Where is the organized resistance that could attract so many people from so many different places to speak with one voice, which I think the Republican Party has done really well. So when you look at the landscape of Democrats, why can't they be more effective in your view, or how could they be more effective? More importantly, I guess.
Because I think they also have to look into the camera and look at people and let people know that they actually care about the people. Donald Trump's a great con artist. He can go around, he can take the photo ops, but he makes people believe that he cares about them, and then he screws them over. That's been his whole life story. But he's able to convince people that he actually cares about them. And you may not like, or the audience may not like that I'm saying that, but he did it in Atlantic City and then screwed the people in Atlantic City. You go through lots of his businesses, he can convince people that he's going to fight for them and then actually does the exact opposite. And so people right now are looking for who's that Democrat that actually is going to fight for me. But it also starts building, I think, an authentic connection with the audience. Like, how many times have you heard a Democrat actually say, I care about you. Like, I care about you, and I feel you, and I know what you're going through. And that causes me pain to know that you're experiencing pain.
I
And
mean,
to act,
I think Cory Booker tries to do that. I think he's a good communicator. I'm very interested in James Tallarico from
Mhm.
Texas, who I think is a very gifted young politician who seems like he has an extremely bright future. I I think it's more than that though. It's sort of this lack of, I don't know, it just doesn't seem organized. It seems so amorphous, and it seems so disjointed as well. And I don't know. I don't know the answer, but it just feels like the Democrats are feckless. And if you look at the polls, people's approval of Democrats is often lower than that of Donald Trump.
although when you look at Trump's approval and you look at rep if you look at the generic midterms still of where people would overall vote, and you specifically ask people, would you want to constrain Donald Trump's power? You then actually do see a Democrat lead, and also in every actual election that's taken place in a special election, every single one, including Arizona. There was a state Senate race recently, I think in Georgia. But I've been covering all of these. There's a 15 to 20% Democrat overperformance versus the Republican in every race. And how many recent elections, whether it was the mayor of Nebraska or a Senate seat in Iowa that just happened, where people like, oh, this was a shocker. This seat was a plus 20 district that now turned Democrat. So I think that when you ask
But
the
is this motivated by anti-Trump sentiment or pro-democratic sentiment? That's, I guess, one of the questions I have. Like, wouldn't it be great to vote for someone, not just against Trump?
But if you ask me, in the Democratic Party, you can criticize your own party without feeling like you're in a cult. So, frankly,
Right.
if you were to ask me in a poll, are you happy with the Democratic Party right now? And I had a yes or a no, right? I'd probably be like, no, I'm not all that happy with them. I want to see them fight more. That doesn't mean that relative to the overall dynamic in the country, I'd rather have Trump's authoritarian regime than pushback, from Democrats. But I think what people are looking for in the Democratic Party, and you mentioned James Tallarico, I think what a lot of people like about Governor Newsom's kind of forceful pushback, as he's been going online with the forceful pushback. Prop 50, the speech he gave over the weekend, signing into law that ICE can't wear masks in California. That it's people see, okay, you're not even just saying the words. Part one, though, let me know how you feel, but put it on the line because we're struggling. Americans are struggling. So show me that you're putting it on the line and that you're fighting for me. And the Democratic Party in general, or any opposition party or resistance party to an authoritarian regime historically, I mean, you need to meet the moment, and you need to fight, and you need to show people that I'm going to do everything in my power because I know the pain that you're going through. And I think that's where there's been a holistically a disconnect. But I think that I think there's time, but I think that a lot of independent voices, whether it's MeidasTouch, other independent media, just people who were never had political backgrounds, who are stepping up in this moment, who are calling it out with clarity. And I think people like that, and they're responding. They're responding to a people fueled movement right now. I'll tell you one thing too. Like, I'll give you an example. That ballroom, even though it's like just the ballroom, 90,000 square foot gold ballroom in the Oval Office, I keep saying this. Where's the lawsuit to block it? And I think when I say it, a lot of people in the establishment are like, "Who cares about the ballroom?" I do. I care because it's like a dog peeing on my mailbox. Like it's not yours. It doesn't belong to you. That White House. That's we that stop marking the people's White House And when you build a 90,000 square foot ballroom, you're choreographing that you don't intend to leave. Then you're going to have corporate sponsors in the 90,000 square foot ballroom. Who's approving this? They're cutting down all of the trees that are 200 years old and making a mockery of the White House. To me, it's symbolic of somebody who acts without laws, the same way Gulf of America is Gulf of Mexico, but they call it that. And we can turn these things into jokes, but that's authoritarian creep. So one of my views too with Democrats or who's ever in power is, why are you letting the guy just destroy the White House? Like, do something. Just stop that, because it's symbolic of so much more.
Yeah, let me ask you about that. I mean, what could be done? You're a lawyer. What could be done legally to stop him from constructing that ballroom?
I think there should be a lawsuit that is filed by members of Congress because it's a congressional appropriations power. Um, Even if Donald Trump says I'm funding it with corporate funds, so what? Now Congress loses its Article 1 appropriations powers to corporate funds. We need to know, is foreign money coming into this? Then it could be a violation of the emoluments provision of the United States Constitution. But to me, the first step that I would do if I was a practicing lawyer and not playing one on YouTube right now is I would go into Washington, D.C. federal court. I would demand an injunction to stop it. I would demand that we get discovery right away to understand what the hell's going on, because there's no transparency. Who's approved the architectural plans? Has taxpayers paid for that? Who are these corporate sponsors? Have they been promised anything in return? Is there foreign money coming in? So to me, I would ask for a court to issue an injunction, have discovery to get those issues answered. And then once we have those issues answered, we could determine the legality of it. But how could we just let this happen? And to me, that's a microcosm of so many other areas that that we need to see. I think need to see action being taken. But we will. That's what I would do as a lawyer.
Yeah, you know what? I was surprised there wasn't more outrage because I was completely grossed out by this whole ballroom thing and getting rid of Jackie Kennedy's rose garden and putting this, outdoor terrace, whatever the hell it is, kind of Mar-a-Lago north. And a lot of the articles I read was like every president, every presidential family puts their own touch, personalizes the White House or renovates it or changes it, and that seemed to be the explanation for it.
Well, there's never been someone who's demolished the East Wing to replace it with a 90,000 square foot ballroom, or as wholesaled. Look, you want to put your touch on the rose garden and plant, lilies versus roses. You want to put this flower versus that flower. That's putting your gentle touch in it. The same way, if you were to be a renter of an apartment, you can put your photos up, but you can't just start taking a hammer and banging the walls and rebuilding the apartment that you're renting. It's not the way, it's not the way it works. These things belong to, this is about we, the people. It's our house. It's not Donald Trump's house. And I think we need to, in everything we do, going back to moral clarity, remember the true founding principles of what this country's been based on, because what the other side is going to do on every issue, no matter what, is whatever Donald Trump wakes up in social media posts. He posts the Epstein files are a hoax. They go, the Epstein file is a hoax. Whatever his post is, that's what the Republican view of the things are. And we have to not shy away from saying, here's what our country was founded on. Here's why we're doing this. Here's what we're fighting for. And we're Americans, damn it. And this is what we truly feel and have convictions about it. And people will respond positively to that. They just want to know that you're with them. And I think that, going back to the examples that I gave, on a personal level where, I was like, I thought these people were with me. Are they really not with me? On a more macro level, I think that's how Americans feel about a lot of politicians, like the trans community, gay community, black people, Asian people, whoever, migrants,
Women.
Latino community. Absolutely. Women, number one. Like, are you with me? or are you gonna sell me out? Do you really stand with me, or are you gonna buy into this? Are you gonna buy into all this right wing, stuff? And to me, I've never wavered in where I've stood up for the trans community. I've never wavered just because, Trump would run ads. I go back to what Governor Bashir of Kentucky says. He goes, I'm in Kentucky. I'm going to let people know that I care about the LGBTQ community. Absolutely. That shouldn't be. If you stand for something, people will recognize that. They just want to see you stand for stuff.
You know what? Speaking of standing for stuff, I can't believe that Pete Hegseth over the weekend has said that they will require credentialed journalists. Did you hear about this, Ben?
Hmm.
To sign a pledge that they will refrain from reporting information that has not been authorized for release, including unclassified information. I covered the Pentagon for NBC News back in the day, and I cannot believe that they are not raising holy hell, that the networks and every media organization in the book is not saying that is insane, Pete Hegseth. No. But why aren't they?
Because they don't have the weapons and they're not equipped with the moral fortitude to push back against a fascist regime. When America is based on good faith behavior, the reporters existing in a system of good faith, whether it's an Obama or a Biden, feel emboldened, rightfully so, based on the First Amendment and their august position as the fourth estate, to challenge it and to call it out and to scream holy hell. But as against an authoritarian regime, they don't. It just becomes par for the course of what it means to be a reporter in an authoritarian regime. When you accept that framing of the issues, it becomes, that's just Trump being Trump. That's Hegseth being Hegseth. That's who they are. So why would I do anything? Or if I do something and challenge this publicly, they're going to ban me. I'm going to lose my job. And there's going to be repercussions potentially with our licenses and the affiliates like Sinclair and Nexstar. So I rather just get through the day, keep my kids at childcare, come back home, cook some dinner, and I live in DC. I don't want to deal with all of this, and then do it again, and we'll wait it out. And I think that mentality has permeated all levels of accountability structures. And I think that's deeply problematic. I think that's why, though, you and I have 5,000 people watching this, live, when it's not like we promoted this on and on and on. We show up, and we could fill a stadium of people who want to hear the truth and hear a good conversation. So it's an interesting dynamic, though, as you see the capitulators, as you see the people who are trying to kind of compromise with this regime, who are really just aiders and abettors, and people who are standing up in this moment. And people are standing up in this moment. The most courageous people are lots of the people who are in this chat right now, who are the ones who are living paycheck to paycheck right now, and who are struggling with the psychological torture of, am I going to be able to make lunch for my kids, or am I going to be able to pay my rent in a given month? And still are able to fight every day for democracy. I mean, that's where we're seeing the heroism in this moment from the people, not the power structures. The power structures are capitulating.
Well, what do you think? I always say this to almost every person I interview, where people say, "What can we do?" I still think there, at least among people who follow me, people do feel powerless. And if someone asked you that, what would you tell them? Obviously, like, I'm trying to do my best to make people aware of what's happening. Obviously, you all at MeidasTouch are doing that same thing. Uh, But what other measures can be taken? What other things, actual things, can people do to fight back when so many people are pretty much rolling over to this administration?
I think it goes back again on a daily basis, on a day-to-day basis, to moral clarity, building boundaries around yourself. And when you're out and about in the world, to not allow hate and prejudice and demeaning conduct and lack of empathy to prevail, just in your small interactions.
Well,
Stand up
yeah,
for people.
of course, but that is not going to make this administration reverse course. It's not going to right the ship. I mean, I that's great advice. I try to live that way, and most people I know try to live that way. But to me, I mean, desperate times call for desperate measures. I mean, w- really? I think there
Well,
must be more.
well, yeah, but there's a more evolved answer. So, but it starts, it's like
Okay.
we gotta build it, we gotta build it. But yeah, it starts. But it starts there. And honestly, I think it's not as easy as that one would think, because lots of people watch atrocities that are committed in plain view in front of them, or see it and don't say anything. And I think it's important that they do. But I think as you start building to kind of more powerful action items, I've seen a lot of people posting it as well here, that there's the No Kings protest coming up on October 18th. The last No Kings protest, there were different measures of the No Kings protest, of how many people showed up over the summer. But, it was close to that 3% threshold where mass mobilization of the population actually results in major impact. And I saw different measures of how many people were out there, but I'm hopeful that this October 18th one is going to be even bigger. And I think if you study authoritarian regimes, and you're going to have to look at how were countries under the Soviet bloc liberated? I mean, including, how did Ukraine separate from Russia? How and declare its independence? How were there these peaceful summer, or the different names to the different popular peaceful mobilization efforts that we've seen before? But I think that that's going to inevitably come to America. I think we've got a taste of it from this past summer. I think October will be very big. And then I think we're going to see those mass mobilizations continue to grow, because a lot of the impact of what Trump's doing hasn't been felt. And then at another level as well, I think we all do what we can control. Like, going back to moral clarity, I stopped being a litigator. I had a pretty good career as a litigator. As a partner at a law firm, I had a pretty good thing going. And then I built a network, and I didn't fully know what I was doing at first, but I thought, based on my litigation experience, I can bring some of that trial stuff and the evidence-based stuff, because no one was really doing it in that unique way. And sure enough, this opened up a whole lane of independent media that exists, and it ushered in a much needed counter to what's taking place. But like, it wasn't a foregone conclusion that a robust independent media that could also sustain a business and function, that could exist. So everybody can do their own thing in their own way. It doesn't have to be media, artists, chefs, teachers, whatever. In your own way, you can do your best to build community, and get the word out that these times are deeply serious. But and then the final thing is, and I know this may sound like an easy thing, but also you have to stay in there. You could take some rests for yourself, but you can't give up, because authoritarianism wants you to give up and tap out. They're relentless. Like, if you want to say what's one thing about Trump that it is a superpower, when he lies about everything. but two, they are relentless about it. Like, will never, ever give up. He will never give up saying that the 2020 election was stolen. He'll never give up saying Russia, Russia, Russia about 2016, despite inviting Vladimir Putin to Alaska and then holding up like love pictures of him. Like, what's more Russia, Russia, Russia than seeing the guy holding up a love picture in the Oval Office with with Putin after our soldiers went on their knees to roll out the red carpet? But we need to be equally relentless back and never give up and never tap out. And we can take breaks, we can rest a little bit, but we always got to get back into the fight.
Yeah, before we go, and I'm gonna let you go in a second, but, it's so funny. Do you think these Epstein files are ever gonna be released? They have this special election, and now it looks like they may have the votes to require them to be released, and many people are obviously fixated on this. You can probably see this in your social media comments all the time, but do you think these files will ever be released? And I guess, do you think they're gonna have the impact that people want them to have in terms of indicting Donald Trump in all of this?
Look, I think it will definitely, whatever is in there, Trump believes is worse than what he's doing now. He believes it's worse, what's in there, than him calling the Epstein sex trafficking ring a hoax. So, and then telling his party that it is a hostile act to release the files. So they've made that calculation of whatever is in there is bad, because if Trump was the hero in this, or if it was innocuous or a passing reference, they'd release that thing right. They'd release that thing right away. You're telling me if Trump was the hero, they'd have it out and they'd have it out right away. We know what's out there already as it relates to Epstein. Like, we know that Mar-a-Lago was used as a grounds where Epstein and Ghislaine found an underage girl, at least one, Virginia Giuffre, and then trafficked her after finding her at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, at his house. Granted, his house happens to oddly be a hotel, or whatever, or a club, but that's not a good fact, especially then when you layer in all of the statements that he's made, other people talking about him and Epstein bringing beauty pageant girls or indeterminate age just to the house with him and Epstein there, promising it was a VIP experience, and Trump saying he's a great guy who likes women on the younger side. And I do a whole video where I lay out everything. But the short answer is that they've turned over 33,000 old documents that had already been released. And then Trump says, we're done turning them over, when that's not the files. So this Trump DOJ, even if this discharge petition is signed, they ain't turning it over. They're not. Bondi, Patel, they're not turning these documents over. So what is going to actually do it? The same way Trump's tax records were turned over back in the first administration, where after Congress subpoenas it, it goes up and there's actual litigation over turning it over. That's what's gonna have to happen. And people are going to have to continue keeping the pressure on and not let this just fade into one of a million things, with Tom Homan taking $50,000 in cash in a kava bag, which I guess he now denies that he did anything illegal, but he hasn't yet denied the kava bag with the $50,000 in cash in it, which he hasn't said that didn't happen, which may be on video. It just becomes this. I mean, who's talking about, Katie, the UAE story, where we gave the UAE, the United States, like secret semiconductor chips, and then they invested billions of dollars in the Trump family crypto business, and they go, oh, nothing to see here. Every day we're seeing these things, and it's incumbent upon us to keep track of them, to let the people know, to walk and chew gum at the same time, right? We can do all, we could focus on these issues, and just to do our best to keep the levels of accountability on, and going back to moral clarity is just acting with moral clarity each and every day.
Do you ever worry that Trump's gonna come after you guys?
Yes, but I mean, worry's not the right word. I mean, he's already gone after people on our network before, and sued for hundreds of millions of dollars, and they've stood up. They noticed his deposition right away. They didn't fold, and then Trump dismissed the case. If he ever came after us, we'd notice his deposition right away. I'd love to take that deposition right away. Um, just you sued me, okay, let's go. Sit there. I'm going to ask you all the questions about whatever the hell it's on. I worry more about my family than me personally, just in terms of their safety and security, in this crazy and dangerous day and age. But, me personally, I know what I signed up for. It is what it is. I have our people who subscribe to the MeidasTouch Substack know I have a slightly kind of morbid view of it as well, like kind of personally, which is, I'm gonna die sometime, and I want to live my life as much as I can, knowing that I've done whatever I can versus late every feeling embarrassed or ashamed, no matter how much it would burn you. So of a chance, it's kind of a choice that you made. So the ball all there is something that really didn't think of. If that
Hey, the last 30 seconds, the Wi-Fi kind of went out and it made it very tough to hear you. We're having some Wi-Fi issues, Ben, but I just want to tell you the National Park Service removed the statue. Whoa, the statue of Trump and Epstein that was put outside the US Capitol today. And you talk about artists doing their job. Did you see the statue that they erected?
I think my editor Jeremy's calling me. I'm not sure if you could hear me, and that
Yeah.
screwed up that screwed up my Wi-Fi.
That's okay. Anyway, the National Park Service removed the statue of Trump and Epstein from the National Mall. The statue was the latest installation by an anonymous group of artists critical of the president. It just reminds me of you saying that everyone needs to do their part: teachers, artists, journalists, everyday citizens. And this is the way they're resisting with this statue next to the US Capitol of Donald Trump and Epstein holding hands.
And I think history is lined with examples of ordinary people in extraordinary times, doing extraordinary things to save their country, and we'll always be supportive of peaceful protests here, and we'll do whatever we can do each and every day. That's we'll never be perfect, but we'll do whatever we can each and every day, and we'll try, and we'll fight for the people, and it's great to see you, Katie, also, since we saw each other last in May. I've seen incredible growth in your platform too.
Well, I'm trying to do a lot what you're doing, Ben, and your team. We're trying to keep people informed because knowledge is power. And if they don't know what's going on, they won't know that they have to fight it and in any way they see possible. So thank you for that. And maybe we can get together in person when I'm out in LA. And thanks for spending this time with me. And now go play with your daughter on her bike.
Sounds great. Great seeing a really big turnout, great crowd, about 5.3 thousand on the front end. I know that it's often bigger on the back end, but it's always great to see everybody.
And everyone,
Subscribe to Katie's Substack and subscribe to our Substack.
thank you. I was going to say just that. Please subscribe to our Substack. I have a great team. It takes a village, and it's a lot of work to do the stuff that we do. So if you guys would even consider being paid subscribers, I know we'd really appreciate it over here. Ben, thanks again.
Bye, everybody.
All right, see ya. Bye, everyone.